That's right, folks. We're back with another episode of Proper Betting, where DWeezy, me, is going to guide you through the live markets and see if there's some value we can find on some of these in-game numbers. Now, tonight we got a matchup for Sunday Night Football between the Chargers and the Bengals, and a bit of two opposites taking each other on in this matchup, as we have one of the best defenses in the league facing off against an offense that has been heating up the past couple of weeks, and it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out. Now, before we still have a few minutes before kickoff, giving us time to dive into some of these props and what the numbers are pregame. And it's always beneficial to know where some of these numbers closed at in a matchup, especially if you're looking to try and target some of the live numbers that become available as this game plays out. Now, we do see in this matchup, like I mentioned, we have, one of the top defenses in the league with the LA Chargers. Newly hired head coach this season, Jim Harbaugh. Defense is a staple with his teams, whether that was at the college level or in the pros in his previous time with the San Francisco 49ers. And we've seen that reflect throughout this season, as not only statistically, but the Chargers have been one of the best under teams when it comes to the game total throughout the season so far, 2-7. And like I mentioned, we got a battle of opposites in this matchup, because the Cincinnati Bengals come in as one of the better teams when it comes to going over the game total. As we see, they are 7-3 when it comes to hitting that over. Now, in this matchup, the books are saying it's going to be a close game, possibly leaning to the idea that we see a lower scoring matchup between these two teams. Currently a 1-point spread, very, very slim spread. We got a game total of 48.5, which in my opinion might be a little high, because I do wonder if this Cincinnati Bengals offense is going to be able to move the ball against this defense. Now, the Chargers come into this matchup as one of the better teams getting to the quarterback. If I'm not mistaken, we see them around third or fourth in sacks when it comes to the rest of the league. Scrolling through, number 3 in the league when it comes to sacks, averaging over 3 sacks a game. And we've known that, offensive line has been a struggle for the Cincinnati Bengals at times, with premier pass rushers like Joey Bosa out there on the outside. You also have Khalil Mack. You still have a number of players on this defense that could produce in a lot of different ways. And so it's going to be very interesting to see if the offense of the Cincinnati Bengals can outperform the defense of the Chargers. Go on, boom. Go on. Now, if we do see a slower game script and gameplay in this matchup, you can expect that game total to start coming down, as it's, very typical, something that you'll see with these live markets. If there's not points being scored, we're going to see the books and the algorithms adjust to what we're seeing take place on the field, and that could open up some opportunities to jump on some of these overs in this matchup. As I mentioned, we got a very skinny spread, so the possibility of trying to create some sort of middle play in the money line on both sides is definitely a high possibility, as we're already talking about both these teams being so closely matched when it comes to the odds that we're seeing for the game. Now, I did mention some of the props, we can look at, see where these closing numbers are, something to potentially look and target. In my opinion, we're going to be looking to jump on the Russian prop for J.K. Dobbins. Now, we do see the return of Gus Edwards, and that might be affecting the props of J.K. slightly, but I expect we're going to see the Chargers offense, lean on the run game, as it has a lot this season. Now, over the past few games, we hadn't necessarily seen the initial start to the run game that we saw at the beginning of the season, but we're still talking about a runner in J.K. Dobbins who can easily go over his Russian prop. Now, in this game, we are seeing a number sitting at 52.5 yards. Now, this is very similar to a couple of numbers we've seen over the past few weeks. And in those instances, he has gone over that number. Now, 52.5 yards, you know, he's a type of runner where if he breaks off a big run in this game, something, over 20 yards, it can make hitting this prop a whole lot easier if you're backing that over. And we see in the past couple of weeks, as I mentioned, he's gone over this number, or excuse me, last week he ended up falling under, but we've seen over the course of the year multiple times where he's eclipsed the 100-yard mark on the season, had a 96-yard rushing performance, had an 85-yard rushing performance. So clearly an NFL back that could easily eclipse this 52.5. Now, I mentioned the return of Gus Edwards, and it'll be interesting to see how that factors into this game. Offensive coordinator Greg Roman is infamous for utilizing the run game and leaning more towards the run game and what many might refer to as a more 90s style offense. And so there is the possibility that we see Gus Edwards get a handful of carries in this matchup. Now, that could factor into the possibility of J.K. Dobbins falling under on some of his props, but I don't think we'll see J.K. losing many snaps to Gus Edwards. J.K. being a more overall back, better in the run game, better in the pass game. Now, I do think there are scenarios that you could see Gus Edwards steal snaps in a red zone offense somewhere around the goal line. But outside of that scenario, I don't imagine that we're going to be seeing Gus Edwards getting many carries in this game. Now, I mentioned the high-powered, offense that has been the Cincinnati Bengals. It has been the pass game that has really carried this team, but not in a lack of effort due to, breakout running back for the team, Chase Brown. We saw the Bengals move on from Joe Mixon over the offseason, and a sign that they feel confident in what they could expect from Chase Brown. And over the course of the season, you could easily make the argument that he has performed. Now, I do believe that this is, more a running back that's going to be utilized in the pass game, but we're already talking about a pass-heavy offense with the Cincinnati Bengals, and a market that many people could look to target is the rushing and receiving yards combined for Chase Brown in this game. Now, we see a number of 95.5. Last week, we saw him snatch up 94 yards in both, 157 in the week before that. Both times we were looking at a total on the prop that was slightly lower than this 95.5 that we're seeing for this matchup. But with a large number like that, this could be an area to keep in mind and potentially target depending on how this game starts out. Now, anybody that was live betting the Thursday night game with the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, they were able to jump in on a great instance where we saw the rushing prop for Barkley in that game drop all the way down to 70.5 yards. And anybody that was following the game clearly knows Barkley ended up going way over that number, clearing even the pregame number of, I believe, 92.5, a very large rushing prop number. But even still, even if we hadn't saw the massive performance in the second half, it's clearly enough to get over that 70.5 number that we were seeing at halftime. And these are the types of angles and potential opportunities that persist when you're talking about live betting in some of this in-game action. Now, as I mentioned, when I kick things off, we are talking about what has been a high-powered offense for the Cincinnati Bengals over the past couple of weeks. Now, we did see the Bengals, especially on the offensive side of the ball, get off to a rough start for the beginning of the season. But in the past 2 weeks, we saw them put up 35 points or more in both of those matchups. and it'll be very interesting to see how things play out against such a good defense. As you could make the argument that the Bengals were taking advantage of the defenses put before them. We're talking about a Baltimore secondary that has struggled immensely throughout the entire season. And the week prior to that, we saw the Cincinnati Bengals put up 41 points on the Las Vegas Raiders, another defense that has been struggling regardless of who was on the other side of the field. So it'll be very interesting to see if the Bengals offense can continue in the fashion that they have for the past couple weeks, or do they come across as frauds and we see this Charger defense shut them down and turn this into a low-scoring game like we've seen persist over a number of the Chargers games. As I mentioned before, one of the best under teams when it comes to the game total in the Chargers. And if we see the Cincinnati Bengals unable to push the ball downfield, especially through the air, it could be a very long game for this team. I believe that the Chargers are, the Chargers are 7-2 to the under on when it comes to the game total. So this number of 48.5, you could potentially take this number to the under, because if the Chargers are able to gain control in this game, it's likely we see them try to lean on the run game. I do not think that, yes, you have what many believe is a star quarterback in Justin Herbert. We saw him lose a number of passing weapons prior to the start of the season, and so far, not that we've seen those players replaced, but we have seen the pass game pick things up over the past few weeks. Now, I still do believe that the Chargers will be looking to lean on the run game in this matchup, as the Bengals have struggled against the run throughout the year. And when it comes to the pass game, the Chargers actually come in with the 31st offense in pass attempts on the season. Yet another indicator that they might be leaning towards the run game in this matchup. And as always with props, and especially some of the live props, the touchdown markets is definitely an area you can look to target. Now in this game, we're seeing Chase Brown and Jamar Chase with a lot of juice on their prop. Jamar Chase coming in at -200 to rack up a TD in this matchup. Chase Brown not much further behind him at -145, maybe -150, depending on where you're shopping. And we see that juice continue on to J.K. Dobbins, who I do think will be the main weapon in this Chargers offense throughout tonight. Now, if you keep sliding down, you do see some of those plus numbers start to pop up. Is this a game that we see T. Higgins reach the end zone? Now, there was a lot of talk around Higgins coming into this season, and over the past few games, we've seen him rack up 3 TDs over the course of the past 3 weeks. Now, he did have a game where he didn't rack up a single TD, but in this matchup, still a possibility to rack up a TD, as we see the odds only at +140. So it would not be completely absurd to think that T. Higgins in this matchup could rack up a TD. We've seen Mike Gesicki be utilized a lot in this offense, and that could be due more to the scheme and the way they utilize the tight end position. But we have seen Mike Gesicki rack up receptions not only throughout the season, but especially over the past few games. Going 3 weeks back, we saw him pull in 7 receptions. The week after that, racking up 5, and then last week racking up 4. So yes, we've seen a slight reduction in the number of receptions he's had over the past couple of weeks, but that does highlight how utilized the tight end position is in this offense, even though you do have a player like Jamar Chase on the outside, a T. Higgins working from the slot, working from the outside, um, a running back that's been utilized a lot in the passing game this year in Chase Brown. So it would not be too absurd to potentially look to target Mike Gesicki for an anytime touchdown at plus 260. Yes, you're talking about the odds being a little bit higher, but as I mentioned, talking about a considerable volume of targets going his way to rack up these receptions that he has over the past few weeks. And if we find ourselves in a red zone scenario somewhere inside the 10, just outside the five-yard line, less likely that you see the team try and power their way into the end zone with a run. That does open the possibility that we see Mike Gesicki in a more prime area to rack up the TD, not needing to gain any yak yardage to get downfield and find his way into the end zone. So a potential target for this game when it comes to the anytime TD market. Now, when looking at the Chargers from the standpoint of this market, we do see that the wide receivers are further down on this list. Now, you could potentially target Gus Edwards, another running back. As I mentioned, he's been out for the past 4 weeks with injury. Returning to this game, you could find yourself in a red zone territory or in a red zone scenario at the goal line where the Chargers punch the ball in with Gus Edwards. More a power back of the two. And at those odds, I don't think we see many touchdowns scored by the Chargers in this game unless the Cincinnati Bengals offense is able to produce points and move the ball downfield. If the Chargers find themselves with a lead, I do expect we're going to see them lean more on the run game, try and grind the clock away, and utilize some of those old school tactics, more common back in the 90s, back when, the run game was utilized a lot more to control the clock. And in that low scoring scenario, not only are we potentially talking about something like the game total under coming in, but we're also talking about less scoring. That means less people in the end zone and less potential for those touchdowns to be scored. Now we still have a moment or two before kickoff, just a little bit of time. If you like some of these pregame numbers to be able to jump in on those before the window closes. But as I mentioned, with the beauty of live betting, not to say that there isn't a rush, but unless there's a number that you think that you're not going to be able to get after the game starts, say you like this game total to go way over 48, where it's currently sitting at. You could easily come in, now hit the over, get that lower number, because as with any market, as with any handicap, and if you feel you have a better number, that's what you have to play. Now, in this matchup, I'm going to be leaning the opposite way because I do believe that, as I said, the Chargers defense is going to be able to stifle the passing offense of the Bengals, and this is going to lead to a lot of a lower scoring game, less touchdowns scored, less points. This could end up being an ugly game, but if you're somebody holding a lot of unders, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for ugly football. You're looking for an ugly game where, as I mentioned, you're not going to have many points scored. The potential for turnovers is definitely something you're looking for. As I mentioned, we have a very dominant defense with the LA Chargers. It still don't feel right calling them the LA Chargers. Maybe I'm just too old for it, but they the San Diego Chargers. That's all I'm gonna say. But as I mentioned, we're talking about a defense that ranked 6th in total yards coming into this week. Top 10 defense against the rush. A defense, similar scenario when we're talking about, ninth overall in passing yards per game, only giving up around 191 yards per game, as well as a very low completion rate against this defense. And so it will be interesting to see how the passing offense of the Bengals lines up with the DBs and the defense of this team. And we also see, as I mentioned, we're talking about a very strong passing offense. Currently, the Bengals coming into this matchup have the second best overall QB rating in the league. And as things get kicked off, it's finally time you see what this play on the field does to these numbers and see what angles we can find, because the beauty of live betting truly is that there are numbers that will come about, that will present themselves, that were not in any way, shape, or form available before the game started. Now we see the Bengals with the ball first, so this could be an opportunity to try and score some early points. Now, so far this season, the Chargers have given up, on average, one of the better defenses when it comes to giving up points, and actually number one, overall in points allowed this season per game, coming in at just over 13 points a game, which is truly insane, especially in the day and age of what we've seen, what offenses can do, and also the way the rule book has been critiqued over the years to favor the offensive side of the ball more than the defense. Now we see the Bengals coming out, with the pass game, able to get a quick first down. And as I'm trying to see who it is, but as I said, we could potentially see a scenario where if we get an early score too by the Bengals, it could push the Chargers to play a not necessarily faster paced game, but get away from the run game, utilize their pass game more, and potentially create a scenario where we see more points scored in this game. Now, if you happen to be, a fan of basketball more, it's, been an interesting day with a rather full slate on the basketball side of things. Yes, it's, an NFL Sunday, but of course, there's basketball on the hardwood currently being played out. And scanning through some of the games that look to be currently wrapping up, it looks like we'll see the Cleveland Cavaliers move to, I believe it is 15-0, a pretty astonishing start to the season for them. And one thing that really stands out about this Cleveland team is the way the offense has been producing since game one. I mean, they seem to figure it out in Cleveland, because for years this was a team that you expected, lower scoring games, more defensive focused. And so far this season, we've seen nothing but high scoring games when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers offense. We see a close one in Portland taking place as the Hawks and Portland Blazers find themselves 106-105 with a minute and a half left in the game, and the Hawks have a slim 1-point lead. We also have a handful of other games going on at the moment, and we'll even have another game tipping off here in roughly about 35-40 minutes. We see Mavs and the Thunder, got a good close battle, 8-point lead for the Mavs, 66. Well, scratch that, as we're early in the third quarter. Thunder have been able to push it to a 5-point deficit, but the Mavs are up 66-61 on the Thunder. And we see a similar situation with the Nets and Knicks going into halftime with a 3-point lead for the Knicks, 60-57 in that matchup. We'll definitely be taking a peek at some of these basketball odds and numbers as they move. We got a bit of a blowout going on in Houston as they take on the Chicago Bulls, currently up a whopping 25 points in their matchup. So as things progress with not only the Sunday night football game, we'll also be taking a peek in on the NBA action as things play out further. Now we do see, we see the Knicks and the Nets actually getting things started off in the second half, and the Nets able to close that lead slightly down to a 1-point lead, still coming in as 7.5-point underdogs on the spread, and honestly might be just a bit high to try and back the Knicks in that matchup. Now, I will be keeping an eye on this Mavs Thunder matchup as, very early in the third quarter, not even 2 minutes played, and we're already talking about sitting with 131 points in this matchup. It'll be interesting to see where the books move the live game total for them. And also, of course, we can't forget about football that we got going on Sunday night. It's Chargers taking on the Bengals. And folks, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you can be alerted and up to date when we go live, especially targeting some of these NFL games and NBA action. And you can't get these live numbers if you're not on the ball when the game's live. Now we see the Bengals offense unable to convert a third down, and they will be punting. And, if you're an underbetter out there, as I am for this matchup when it comes to the game total, this is kind of what you wanted to see. The Bengals struggling to push the ball past midfield in their opening drive, forced the punt, and now it's going to be a question of what can the Chargers do with the football. And as some of our action gets started going back with the NBA, we still see things locked up as with the Atlanta Hawks and the Portland Trail Blazers. Will we see this game go to overtime? 1-point lead definitely doesn't mean it's off the table. And the Cavs wrap up a 14-point lead over the Charlotte Hornets to keep that winning streak going. Now, as I mentioned, we do have another NBA game yet to get going, slated, I believe, with a 9 p.m. tip-off. We're going to take a look. Yep, we got Utah Jazz and the LA Clippers facing off now. The Jazz have been a team that leaves something to be desired when it comes to the play on the court for a couple years now. Not to say bottom dwellers, but have not produced a quality team over the past few seasons. And in this matchup, we see the Clippers coming in as a 9.5-point favorites, with total sitting at 221.5. Both these teams come in more leaning towards the under in their game totals. The Jazz 5-7, the LA Clippers 5-8. Both teams to the under. Neither doing particularly well against spread. A 6-6 record for the Utah Jazz, and the Clippers sitting at 6-1 against the spread. Now that cannot, unfortunately for the Jazz, that 500 consistency or close to it hasn't persisted when it comes to the outright victories against teams as they come into this matchup with a 3-9 record. The LA Clippers hovering just under a 500 winning percentage on the season, 6-7, and in this matchup. Almost feel like that spread is just a bit high for the Clippers. Looking over the course of their looking over the course of the Clippers' past few games, now we've seen them be able to rack up um, not enough points to clear 110 in their past two games, and that could be a reason why we are seeing not only this total as low, not I won't say as low, 221.5 isn't terribly low, but yeah, that's definitely a reason we see a total on the lower side of things. Now we did see a few games back that the Clippers were able to put up 128 points against Oklahoma City Thunder. Now this was a Thunder's team without Chet Holmgren, as he's down with that fractured pelvis. And in this matchup with the Utah Jazz, it'll be a question of not only how consistent can that offense be, but how well does the defense prevent the Utah Jazz from scoring in this game. Now it's time, good time to start keeping an eye on where some of these live props for the Sunday night football game can start moving to as things have kicked off, because it doesn't take much to miss a window on some of these numbers, especially when things can change, can turn on a dime when it comes to some of these numbers moving or the markets being locked up. We've seen both teams touch the ball so far and not much action. Still a lot of game to be played. But as I said, if you're an underbetter in this matchup, you're not looking for a lot of scoring. You're looking for a slower pace game. We saw Gus Edwards pick up a couple of carries, not able to do much with them, but that could be an indicator that we see him utilize more in this game and less of J.K. Dobbins, thus potentially putting any over bets on J.K. Dobbins props in jeopardy quite early. Now we saw this defense for the Chargers force a 3-and-out the first time around, and not a 3-and-out, but a very unproductive drive from the Cincinnati Bengals their first time around. And so we'll see the Bengals take the field for the second time, and can they move the ball against this defense? That's going to be the real question of how things play out, because if we can see Joe Burrow and this offense, potentially put up points, and if they get chunk plays out of what we just got from Chase Edwards, a 20-plus yard reception as they start this drive with a bang early. Now, of course, Jamar Chase, one of the best wide receivers in the league, and if you let this man get into space, it's without a doubt he's gonna burn you, and that's exactly what we saw happen as we saw Joe Burrow maneuvering in the pocket, directing a little bit downfield, and Jamar Chase found that soft spot, got away from his man, and was able to rack up plenty of yards after the catch. Now the Chargers defense has, been one of the more disciplined defenses in the league. If I'm not pull things up. We saw, face mask penalty, which is always going to hurt you when you have those 15-yard penalties. You damn near, oh, actually, they're calling it for a horse collar tackle. But either way, just talking about a, a penalty that can nearly flip the field. We see the Bengals moving all the way into the red zone, I believe roughly around the 15-yard line. And this could be, detrimental to the defense when it comes to keeping them out of the end zone. Now, it'll be interesting to see, can the Bengals rack up a TD in this situation? Boone, shut up. So we see him go back to Jamar Chase and not much from it. And, Chargers defense find themselves with their backs against the wall early in this. Oh, yeah, you can't even say early in this drive is so much, because that penalty basically, took the ball from roughly around the 30-yard line and pushed them into the red zone. Bengals inside the 10 with the handoff and a push from the pile, bringing things close to a first down. As I mentioned before this game got started, Chase Brown is the main back in Cincinnati. Not sure where what his pass props and rushing props might look at. Let's take a peek at those. On the verge of potentially scoring the touchdown. We see currently a live number, 74.5 rush yards, and with 4 carries and 16 early yards, this might be something worth targeting. Boom. Now, will the Bengals be able to push or punch the ball into the end zone here? They were able to rack up a first down, but found themselves not able to get in the end zone. A little play action and pass deflected, trying to get the ball to Jamar Chase. There was a lot of juice on his pass prop, and that's why. Talking about a tall, talented wide receiver, one of the best in the league, whether that be at coming down with contested passes or being able to work his way into open territory. And he's just unable to haul that one in. Now we see 2nd and goal. Will this defense be able to keep them out of the end zone? Now, an early score doesn't necessarily kill you on any sort of underprops, but it is not what you would prefer to see. And we got a flag on the play as Joe Burrow is throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone. And we do see the markets locked up currently, that having a lot to do just simply with the Bengals being as close to the end zone as they are. But they're going to push themselves a little bit back as we got a holding penalty. And, never what you want to see from an offense. Penalties in the red zone are the worst thing you can get. Now we got a 2nd and goal from the, I believe, 8-yard line. So we got the pocket breaking down, Joe Burrow running around, and we're going to have another penalty on this play, as even though it was an incomplete pass, it's going to end up being a legal touch-in as Joe Burrow, at minimum, a legal touch-in. It'll be interesting to see if they call intentional grounding on this play. But in efforts to avoid the sack, Joe Burrow flicked out a pass, and yes, they're going with intentional grounding, folks. As I was just saying, penalties will kill you in the red zone, and this is a 15-yard penalty plus loss of down. So what went from potentially a touchdown scenario, now we're talking about 4th down and looking at a field goal attempt. Can't help but get a little bit excited because, as I mentioned, if you're on the under in this game, I was able to get that pregame number at, I believe it was 40, right at 48. We currently see a live number of 43 and a half. The books just locked it up. Oh, excuse me, we still have third down. That was second down, but they lost it down. Makes this a very difficult chance. And Bengals are unable to get the ball into the end zone, only getting it back to the 10-yard line. So we are going to see a field goal attempt here. Like I said, if you're an underbacker, this is what you wanted to see out of that Chargers defense. And I was talking about it before the game started. If this Bengals offense is not going to be, able to move the ball against the defense, we're going to see very few points scored in this game and possibly a lot of field goals. Now, it was a personal foul penalty that helped them get into the red zone, and then it was their own undoing that they weren't able to keep the ball in the red zone and in range to go after the end zone. Now, while that's going on, we're going to jump over and take another peek at what's going on in the NBA. Still a little time before our Clippers matchup tips off. See the Knicks starting to put a lead on the Nets in their matchup. Currently 79-71. Mavs and Thunder, still a lot of scoring going on in that matchup, as nearly halfway through the quarter, and we got 80-73, 153 points already scored in this game. We're seeing a total of 240 and a half. Now, in the Rockets-Bulls matchup, even though it's a blowout, we're still seeing a massive total at 245 and a half in that game, as it's a 30-point blowout, 103-73. Now, this may be an instance where we can jump in on the under, because a little bit of blowout theory might suggest that we see less points scored in this fourth quarter, because we're not going to see the starters. We're going to see a lot of the bench players. And while there might be a lot of scoring attempts, that doesn't necessarily mean that we see the ball going into the hoop. Now, I'm going to be jumping on this under 245 and a half in this matchup, as we still got just over 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. And we're talking about, roughly 70 points need to be scored for an over to come in. Currently sitting at 176. 24 points there, another 40. So yeah, roughly about 70 points still need to be scored if the over is to hit in that game. And as I said, I expect that in this fourth quarter we'll see a lot of backups, a lot of bench players coming in and racking up time, whether that be for the Rockets, who have the 30-point lead, or the Chicago Bulls. Now, see, again, this is an instance where the live markets open up opportunities that may have not presented themselves before the game started, because I can promise you that this game total was nowhere around 245 and a half, and we're even seeing it currently flash to 247 and a half. But major inflation due to the scoring that we've seen out of the Houston Rockets, who've already racked up 103 points just through three quarters. And unless we see this continue through the fourth quarter, we're going to see this game total tick down from where we took it at 245 and a half. We're already seeing, some slight flashes of 242, 243 and a half. So a good indicator, an indicator that scoring is slowing down at the moment. And as I mentioned, that blowout theory can come into play with such a large lead. Would not be shocked if we see this game total and final score finish somewhere around 230, 235. And we see things locked up on the boards for the Nets and Knicks, as it's an 11-point lead at the moment for the Knicks. Now, to switch gears back over to football. We see Justin Herbert going down on what appeared to be, either a naked bootleg or a bit of a busted play. He's looking downfield and just the pressure of the Cincinnati Bengals defense bringing him down for the sack. Now, if the Bengals can shut down the Chargers on the offensive side of the ball, well, I may have spoken too soon as we see Justin Herbert break off what appears to be a 15-yard run to pick up first down. Now, something we don't see too terribly often, but yes, Justin Herbert does have enough speed and mobility to rack up some rushing yards if he so chooses so. And in this instance, not a designed run. Pocket wasn't necessarily breaking down, but a lot of open space in front of him, and he has the wheels to make you regret giving him that space. Chargers coming out, and then in I formation, going back to the play action. A short pass, but with this Chargers offense, if they're able to get their run game going, able to utilize that short passing game, it'll grind away the clock just as much as if they were running the ball. We're already over halfway through the first quarter, almost 3/4 of the way through the first quarter, and only 3 points have been put up on the board so far. Somebody like me sitting with that under ticket on the game total, definitely like the way things are progressing so far. Wouldn't be upset if we did see a touchdown racked up on this drive by the Chargers, as they were able to move the ball, but we do have a penalty on the play, as well as we see a player getting up a bit slow. I believe, yes, that's McConkey, the rookie, and someone that was expected to be one of the main pieces in the pass game when he was drafted this past NFL draft. You'll see a defensive penalty. They choose to decline the penalty in this situation as they got more yardage on that pass play. It'll be interesting, excuse me. We see more play action out of Herbert, and we got a touchdown. I believe, Will Disley. Probably not the top guy on your bingo card for first TD scored in this game. But we do see the Chargers take an early lead and, barring a missed extra point, going up by 4. And just as I said, doesn't hurt us too much on that, on the under ticket. And we do see the live game total flashing at 50.5 at the moment. See a bit of a larger spread with the Chargers, -3.5 currently in this matchup. Now, you heard me mention earlier, it did open at, I believe, -1. Not a very large spread, and I don't expect that we'll see much of a blowout in this game. So, this spread, we're not going to see any. I don't think we'll see anything over 7, 8 points on the spread. I think we're going to, if the Bengals can push the ball downfield, we'll see them in a situation where they can put up points. That last drive for the Bengals, it was more their own undoing than the defense, and led to a field goal when they were threatening to get the ball inside the 5-yard line. Now, over on the hardwood, we got the Knicks securing more of that lead, as it's 87-73 at the moment. 14-point lead in that game with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. But it looks like the Knicks are putting the distance between them and in-city rival well, not in city, but rival of the Brooklyn Nets. 14-point lead at the moment. Now we see a bit of a close game still between the Mavericks and the Thunder, 80-73 in that matchup. And going to our game that we currently have a play on, Houston Rockets, Chicago Bulls, 108-81. Talking, at the moment a grand total of 89 total points. We're on the under 245.5. Still feel good about where we're sitting. A couple minutes into the fourth quarter, or about a minute and a half into the fourth quarter. Game total currently at the moment sitting at 242, right under where we took it. Do expect we'll see that drop a few more points if they continue to fail to put up any points in this matchup, because to keep that game total high in the live markets, you're going to have to continuously be scoring. And with that blowout theory in place, I think we're going to see the scoring slow down a decent bit. And that seems to be the way things are leaning currently at the moment, as the game total keeps coming down. Whereas a few moments ago, it was splashing at 247, and currently we see 241.5. And I would not be shocked to see that number continue to move down in this matchup. The Bulls have been one of these, have struggled on the offensive side of the ball a lot this year, and that has seemed to persist throughout this matchup. And I don't suspect that we're going to see that turnaround in the fourth quarter. And we have, kickoff for the Bengals, nothing special. And we're going to see the Bengals offense take control of the ball and see if, they can avoid shooting themselves in the foot this time around. That last drive, off the heels of a big play by Jamar Chase and a penalty, they found themselves within the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, and a pair of penalties on the offensive side of the ball basically wiped out any chances of reaching the end zone. Now, we haven't seen the Bengals try and utilize the ball much in the rushing game. We do see 18 early yards for Chase Brown in this matchup on 5 carries. Now, on the other side of the ball, mentioned J.K. Dobbins before the game started. So far, he is without a single carry in this matchup. And Gus Edwards, we see with 2 carries for 8 yards. Now, when we take a look at the receiving yards, Jamar Chase already in this game has 3 catches for 47 yards. And we see, I believe, Higgins breaking off a good-sized run after catch, as Chargers had him wrapped up, but he was able to fight for even more yardage, racking up close to 15 yards on that catch. 20 yards. His first reception of the night, dragging 1-2 defenders downfield. Now, if they can continue this pace, we saw they were able to get some chunk yards on plays on their previous drive, but they continue to give up sacks like they just did with Joe Burrow in the backfield under distress. It's going to be a long day for this offense. Now, looking at some of these live numbers, we currently see Jamar Chase, his receiving prop, over 100 yards, currently sitting at 112.5. I mean, I'm not sure. Me personally, that just seems like a stay away in this matchup. Because, yes, could he potentially reach that number? Of course. That's going to require for him to continue to get receptions throughout this game. And that's going to be a big question. How consistently can they get him the ball, especially if we see Joe Burrow under distress from the pass rush of the Chargers? Now, looking at some of the other players, as I mentioned, we had Higgins with a 20-yard reception. We see his current live number sitting at 68.5 yards. This potentially could be an area to look at. If this number comes down a little bit, it's probably looking a whole lot better before Higgins rocked off that 20-yard reception. But and we continue to see the Bengals moving the ball through the pass game, but falling short on the third down play. Now it'll be interesting to see if they go for it on fourth down with a fourth and short. I believe only needing 1 yard to convert a first down. And that is the case. We're going to see the Bengals going for it here. Now, this is a chance if the Chargers stop the Bengals offense. This works well for that live under ticket that we have on the game total in this matchup. And we see the Bengals call a timeout. Unsure, was this an instance they're trying to avoid the delay of game penalty, or are they legitimately going to go for it? It'll be interesting to see if they keep the offense on the field. Now, as they do that, we're going to jump back in and take a look at the NBA. Now, we will have the Clippers in their matchup tipping off here just shortly in the next few minutes. I see they got the numbers locked up on the board for the Rockets and Bulls matchup. Currently 115 to 89. Still a blowout. No chance of the Bulls coming back in this matchup. And as I see it, what we're talking about, 204 points. So we're still talking about needing a good 35 points at least in threatening the game total under that I played at 245.5. Now we see that game total for Mavs and Thunder starting to creep down a little bit, 238.5, but still probably sitting higher than the pregame number. But we see the Rockets and Bulls numbers open back up and sitting right at that 245 where we took it. And the Knicks continue to hold on to their 14-point lead against the Brooklyn Nets as we see the third quarter come to a close in that matchup. Now here's the question. Are the Bengals going for it on 4th and 1 still after calling the timeout? Now this could be a huge momentum swing. They lined up to snap the ball. 10 seconds left on the play clock. Still unsure if they're going to snap. And we got a snap. And a quick pass to T. Higgins, and he racks up the first down and then some. Oh, wait. We got a potential fumble on the field, and it looks like the ball is going to be returned all the way as number 32 for the Chargers takes the ball to the end zone. Now it'll be interesting to see if this stands. By all accounts, I have not putting it up on the scoreboard yet. Now, of course, all turnovers in the NFL are reviewed by the booth upstairs, so it would not require having to throw the challenge flag. As we get a replay, looks like Higgins was down on the field before the ball came out. Yeah, I would be shocked if this one wasn't overturned by the booth. But we'll have to wait and see, as of course, it being the NFL, you got to squeeze in all these commercials. But based off the angles I saw from the replays there, we're likely to see that call overturned and the ball come back, being Cincinnati's ball on the Chargers side of the field. Coming back to the NBA, we got a little bit of scoring. We see that, number currently around 248.5, 120.94. I wouldn't say that, this is threatening just yet. on 245.5 that I played. It'll be a big question of, will the Bulls continue to score points? Because I do believe we've seen a little bit of a drop off from the production for the Rockets. Only 12 points scored so far in this fourth quarter, where they were racking up 41 points in the second quarter, 40 points in the third quarter, while the Chicago Bulls have failed to score more than 26 points in any quarter so far this game. Currently with 16 points. I may potentially even jump in on another under on this game total. You know, currently sitting at 248.5. I liked it at 240, going under 245.5, and still feel pretty confident on taking under with this 248.5. Now, by no means will I be even looking at the spread for this matchup. You're talking about minus 22.5 points. I don't think there's any way you can really touch that. No clue what you're going to get from these backups as far as consistency and trying to, to handicap it one way or the other, to be honest. Whether you're talking about trying to take the Bulls plus 22.5 points, or take the Rockets minus 22.5, which currently is now at minus 25 points. There's just way too many factors that can come into play that might prevent that number from working out in your favor, in my opinion. We see the Mavs where they currently with a 10-point lead over the Thunder with just under 10 minutes left in their game. And the Knicks still holding on to an 11-point lead in their matchup as they're just over a minute into the fourth quarter themselves. As I said, in this Bengals matchup, that call was overturned, and it's Bengals ball at or near the 30-yard line, I believe. Now, there may be some questions on T. Higgins and possible back injury after he took, a rather nasty shot from DB on the Chargers. Currently don't see him on the field, but as far as I know, there's no official word on whether or not he's out for the rest of the game. Now we're going to have another crucial, I was going to say we're going to have a crucial third down coming up for the Bengals, but there is a flag on the play. We got defensive pass interference, and that's, an automatic first down for the Bengals, and going to put them what looks inside. Looks like we're going to see the Bengals with the ball at the 17-yard line for the 17-yard line of the Chargers as the Bengals keep driving. Now, the last time they were in the red zone, the Bengals were their own worst enemy, racking up multiple penalties that pushed them back. Let's see if they can convert this trip to the red zone into a touchdown. And as we take a look, we see the live game total for this Bengals and Chargers matchup currently sitting at 50.5, just slightly over where the pregame number closed. I think some slight anticipation that we see a touchdown scored here by the Bengals. Now, if they only rack up the field goal, I think we see that game total drop back under the original number. And for the Higgins backers out there, I think you don't have anything to worry about as we see him back on the field and racking up another catch. Now, things consist if you're somebody holding an over ticket for receptions when it comes to T. Higgins. I think you got to feel good about the way things are progressing so far in this matchup. Not 100% sure where the number closed at, but we already see him with a number with 3 receptions early on for 33 yards. And currently, for T. Higgins, a live number of over 6.5 receptions, minus 121. It's possible that ship might have sailed on trying to jump on that number. Now, something I talked about Gesicki before the game, potential number to jump on in this matchup as we see the Cincinnati Bengals going for yet another field goal. Gesicki over 2.5 receptions plus 124. I'm going to jump on this number at the moment. I talked about how he's been utilized within the offense over the past few weeks. And if I'm not mistaken, all 3 weeks, even though we've seen a decline in his receptions from game to game, he would still have covered this over 2.5 on the receptions prop. As we see things go to yet another commercial, because it's the NBA, or excuse me, it's the NFL, of course. So, let's peek back in on an NBA action. Currently seeing with about 4 minutes left to go in the game, the Rockets and Bulls. Rockets have not slowed down with the scoring, 134 points. Bulls barely getting to 100. Now we can say that under is being threatened. Only 15 points off with, or even less than that, 134, about 12 points off. 4 minutes left to play in the game. Rockets possibly going to put up 150 in this matchup by themselves. Can't be mad at the Chicago Bulls. They definitely did what you wanted if you're backing an under on a game total, and that was fail to score, because we're talking about potentially a 40-point blowout when it's all said and done. Now, as we look at our other matchups on the NBA card, as Clippers game is yet to tip off, probably here in the next few minutes we'll see them get good and going, but 11-point lead for the Mavericks in their matchup against the Thunder, as it's 109-98 with about 6.5 minutes left in that game. And we still have an 11-point lead for the Knicks over the Brooklyn Nets with just under 9 minutes to go as they face off in New York City. And the Rockets just keep scoring in that matchup, so likely can say that under is good and dead. As we look at the Bengals and Chargers game, small spread, minus 2.5 to the Chargers. The game total back around where we saw it pregame, currently sitting at 49.5, slightly over where it finished or where it closed at pregame. But as I mentioned, there's been little scoring in this game so far, and that was how I expected the gameplay to unfold. And we could see this game total start to drop more and more if we continue to see the lack of scoring that we have, because in multiple drives for the Cincinnati Bengals, we've seen them be able to reach the end zone but not be able to convert those trips into TDs. And while the Chargers have not had the most productive drives, every time they've touched the ball, they have managed to get the ball into the end zone. And if we see this Chargers team get a little bit of a lead, I do expect that we'll see them lean more on the run game to try and grind away that clock. Boom, shut up. No, you go on. Go lay down. Now we got the Chargers lining up with the ball just inside their own 30-yard line, utilizing a lot of play action, and we see it work in their favor as Herbert's able to find Quentin Thomas for what appears to be almost a 20-yard reception. He's able to find, just a soft spot in the zone, and they're able to convert it into a first down and move the ball downfield. And we see, yet another big reception out of the passing game for the LA Chargers, as Hurst was able to rack up, or excuse me, as Will Disley is able to rack up what appears to be a 15-yard reception. And, like I said at the beginning of the game, you might have not had him on your bingo card, but Will Disley is another one that might be worth a slight look on the live markets for some of his props, given what we've seen so far. Looking at the receiving yards, you see Will Disley already with 49 yards in this game off 2 receptions. And you could potentially, unders aren't ever sexy, but currently you're seeing a number of 75.5 for Will Disley. And he's sitting at 50 yards off 2 receptions. Could he get another 25 yards? Well, we got a downfield strike from Justin Herbert to Quentin Johnson for a touchdown. I mentioned his touchdown prop before the game got started. If I'm not mistaken, he was somewhere around plus 200. And this could be the type of scenario that leads to the LA Chargers leaning more on their run game, as we've seen a heavy dose of the play action throughout this first half. And this touchdown did come off a play action play. So it'll be interesting to see how things progress and if the Bengals can find a way to push the ball into the end zone instead of settling for field goals, because twice now the Bengals have settled for field goals when on the other side of the ball we see the Chargers racking up TDs. And this could work out very well into the possibility of an under coming in on this game, because even though that touchdown has the chance of moving the game total up on the live markets, we see the Chargers turn to the run game more in the second half if they could maintain this lead. I do think that we see that game total start to come down. Now it is locked up currently at the moment. See 54. Honestly, I'm going to jump on the under 54 for this matchup, because I do not have faith that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be able to convert some of these drives into touchdowns, and that we continue to see them lean on the scoring field goals instead. And of course, if I liked under 48, there's no reason why I wouldn't like under 54 in this matchup. And let's dive into what we have on going, as we've been following along with the hardwood. You see the Clippers tipping off in their game. Well, now isn't this interesting? We still have a slim chance, a slim hope of the 245.5 cashing in the Rockets-Bulls game, though looking like it's coming down to the wire. About a minute and a half left to play in that game. The current total sitting at 241. So if some people can continue to miss shots, we might just squeak out with a victory there. And we do see that the Clippers and Jazz have gotten started up with an early four-point lead for the Clippers, as it's 14-10 in that matchup. And we see the Mavs putting a little bit of more distance between them and the Thunder, pushing that lead out to 13 points. And with only 4.5 minutes left in that game, it looks like the Mavs will be able to hold on to that victory. And with the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, seen that lead get chopped down slightly, but still an 8-point lead for the Nets, as they got over 6 minutes left to play in that matchup. Well, if they can go without hitting the bucket for the next minute in that Houston Bulls game, we'll squeak by the skinniest of victories, just by the hook, as we had under 245.5, and currently the score is sitting at 141 for the Rockets, 104 for the Bulls. When you put those together, you do have 245. So it's going to come down, you know, can they go 70 seconds without making another basket? That is yet to be seen. It appears that they are on a timeout, or at least coming off a timeout. But we're going to need missed shots, and it looks like that under is going to die in, you know, one of the most tragic of ways. You're right there at the very end, coming down to the wire. Now we see the Bengals back out on the field, and a rather ugly play and pass by Joe Burrow, throwing the ball way behind his wide receiver for an incomplete pass. A wide open wide receiver, like, wow. Just completely missing Gesicki on that one. We see a short pass in front of Sticks, but that is going to bring up a third and what appears to be 4. There's still 10 minutes left in the second quarter, but the Bengals are going to have to find a way, not only move the ball downfield, but they got to find a way to rack up 6 points. You know, got to turn these field goals into touchdowns, or it appears that this could be a very long night for the offense. And we see Joe Burrow get stacked and go down. Yeah. The Chargers coming into this game were the 3rd best team in the sack department. And that has not changed, as they've gotten multiple sacks on Joe Burrow now. And what's curious is, you might refer to it as an exotic blitz, but we see essentially only 4 rushes on this play, and they were still able to get to the quarterback easy. And the Bengals find themselves punting, and this could spell, you know, disaster for the Bengals. As I said, you know, a battle of opposites in this game, as one of the more high-powered offenses taking on one of the better defenses in the league. And so far, it is the defensive team that is currently winning that matchup. Now, as the Chargers get the ball back, it will be interesting to see how well they can move the ball down the field. We've seen them use a lot of play action, and so far lean mainly on the pass game and not the run. Now that we see them with a 2-score lead, let's see if that continues. Opening up this drive with a run. Check in on who it was. I believe that might have been Dobbins. Not 100% sure. And if it was Dobbins, I believe that might have been his first carry of the game so far. Or excuse me, second carry of the game so far, but still, we've only seen 5 rushes out of the 2. And talk about rushes, we got Justin Herbert breaking off a massive run, as it appears that the Bengals in man coverage forgot to make sure that to keep the quarterback in the pocket. And we'll have to see how long a run that was, but at least 20, if not 30 yards. Taking the ball from inside his own 40 all the way down to what appeared to be around the 35-yard line of the Bengals. This Bengals defense has really struggled to contain not only Justin Herbert in the pocket, as that's multiple rushes for a lot of yards. We see, a pass out of the backfield. I believe it's J.K. Dobbins in the pass game. No, excuse me, Gabe Davis. able to take the ball from the flat and pick up what appeared to be not only another first down, but more than that. I believe he got over 15 yards on that catch. You know, the Bengals so far unable to get much of any real pressure on Justin Herbert. And so far on this drive, they have literally just walked the ball downfield. We have an inside handoff, and they're able to pound the ball all the way for what appears to be another first down. The Chargers find themselves on the brink of putting up yet another touchdown in this game, and if they do, that might seal the deal early for the Bengals in this matchup, as we still have 7 minutes to go in this first half, and the Chargers are on the verge of putting up a 15-point lead possibly on the Bengals. And we see the Chargers leaning on their running game more to pound the ball inside the 5-yard line. Now, something that we highlighted before the game started was just how high the odds were for the running backs of the Chargers in this game to rack up a touchdown, both with major juice on those numbers. And now that we see the team inside the 5-yard line, I do suspect that we'll see the Chargers lean on their run game as it's 1st and goal. Now we see them line up in a shotgun formation, but will they hand the ball off? More play action. We see Justin Herbert just heave it away out of the back of the end zone. Now there was pressure on this play, and we see a flag on the field. Just check in on what this call is going to be. I believe we have roughing the passer, which means an automatic first down. And yes, that might be I won't say the worst call this season, but it is definitely a ticky-tack call. To if you're the Bengals coaches, you got to be telling your players you got to have more discipline there, because even though that's a ticky-tack foul, now we see the Chargers with the ball at the 2-yard line, lined up in a more traditional wishbone formation, and still running play action. An incomplete pass on this play. Now it'll be, this heavy dose of play action, all it has worked extremely well to get them, get the Chargers offense down into the red zone. I don't think that's what you need to be trying to utilize this close to the end zone. You're a running team, power the ball into the end zone. You have the running backs to make it happen. I believe we do have Gus Edwards in on this play. What appears to be a heavy package and a quick inside handoff. And we need an official spot. It does appear that he is short of the end zone, but not by much. Now the Chargers are going to find themselves in 3rd and goal from inside the 1-yard line. Now, given what I've seen out of the Bengals offense so far this game, I'm not concerned with them potentially scoring points. So if the Bengals defense wants to stand up and force the Chargers into a field goal in this situation, I'm not going to be too upset, as that works greatly in the favor of my under on the game total. And it looks like they have stopped them on 3rd down. Now, I do have to say that is, for a defense that has been struggling to stop this offense so far, that is definitely a momentum play that you have to make. 3rd and 1, major penetration across the line of scrimmage by the defensive line, and able to keep the running back out of the end zone. Now we see the Chargers going for it. It'll be interesting to see, can they punch the ball in here? As the play clock ticks down, it appears that they're going with the timeout. Yes, the Chargers use their final timeout. So it'll be interesting to see, do they keep the offense on the field, or are they going to run out the field goal unit in this instance? As I mentioned, the Chargers have been dedicated to the run mainly this season, and they find themselves in a prime opportunity to show off just how dedicated to the run they are. Now, so far, we've seen a massive dose of play action over the course of these possessions by the Chargers. So, will we see them? It appears, yeah, and they have the offense back on the field in this situation, so they are going for it. As I mentioned, if the Chargers are able to stand up and keep the, or excuse me, if the Bengals are able to keep the Chargers out of the end zone, this works greatly in favor for the under bet that we have on the game total so far. We see another inside handoff, and they're able to go over the top and find their way into the end zone. Now, while that it may not be the perfect scenario for trying to cash an under ticket, it doesn't hurt too much, as I do believe that we see the Chargers lean more on the run game throughout the second half now that we've seen them establish a sizable lead, because from so far what we've seen out of the Bengals offense, there isn't much threat there, even with the likes of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the other side of the ball. And with a successful PAT, we see a 15-point lead by the Chargers with still over 4.5 minutes left in this game, or left in this first half. And as they go to break, we're going to take a peek at the basketball as things are starting to wrap up in some of our later games on the hardwood. Now, we have New York Nets looking to finish the game with at minimum a double-digit win over with the Knicks having a double-digit win over the Nets, as they have a 12-point lead with only about a minute left in that game. Now, with the Jazz and Clippers, we are seeing some early scoring as near closing out the first quarter, and it's 23-30 with the Clippers holding a 7-point lead over the Utah Jazz. Now, we do see a game total of 55.5. Not much higher than that 54 that we saw earlier, because unless we start to see some scoring out of the Cincinnati Bengals in this matchup, even if we see the Chargers continue to rack up TDs in the second half, it's going to take a lot of scoring for them to cover the game total by themselves. Boone, shut the hell up. So, yes, in this matchup, we're looking for not necessarily a slower pace second half, but to come in under that, under 55.5 where we currently see it. Now, while we're waiting for things to get back from commercial, because of course we're talking football. Now, take a little closer look at what's going on with the Jazz and their game versus the Clippers, as first quarter is nearly wrapped up. Like I said, just over a minute left in that game. 7-point lead for the Clippers. We're seeing 227.5 on the game total. A little bit up from where we saw it pregame. I believe that was 220.5. But still pretty not enough movement that I would say worth jumping in on the under just yet, but something to keep an eye out for. Now let's slide back over to the Bengals and the Chargers. Take a peek at what some of these props are doing at the moment. We're talking about rushing yards. We've seen J.K. Dobbins currently sitting at 36.5 rushing yards. And honestly, I think This was worth jumping on. Now we've seen, them utilize Gus Edwards so far. But we're seeing JK coming the number just massively lower than where we saw it pre-game. And I do expect that we're going to see a lot of rushing attempts out of the Chargers offense in the second half with this lead. I'm jumping on the over for J.K. Dobbins, over 36.5 rushing yards for the rest of the game. Now, y'all heard me talking about Gesicki earlier. I did jump in on that over 2.5 receptions. And let's go take a peek where he's currently sitting at. Doesn't have a reception yet, but that doesn't mean that this play is dead, as 3 receptions, not hard to get over the course of a half, and still a whole second half of gameplay to go. Now, something that's, a little shocking, even though we've seen him rack up a couple of receptions and give up some yak yardage, Bengals have not been able to convert the production out of their wide receiver core into TDs, only racking up 2 field goals so far throughout this game. With the ball at 35-yard line with a little over 4 minutes left in the half, they do have time to try and reach the end zone, but that's going to require them stringing together a successful drive. We see a funky play design with Jamar Chase lined up in the backfield, and just a downright ugly play, only able to pick up 1, maybe 2 yards on the play, bringing up another third down. Now, unless you're somebody holding the over on the receptions prop for Jamar Chase, this didn't do much for you. You want to try and get the ball in the hands of your best playmaker, but this not a clean play design, trying to bring Jamar Chase out of the backfield, sneak him out into the flat, and see what he can do in open space. And we see another sack on Joe Burrow to bring up 4th down. If things continue into the second half like this, something that may be worth targeting now, and I'm going to pull up the number myself, we may look to jump on the under for the Bengals team total. Currently seeing 19.5, and I gotta say, I can't say I see him scoring 20 points in this game the way they've been playing in this first half. I'm going to jump on the under with this number now, as it's -110. Because so far throughout this first half, we've barely seen the Bengals be able to rack up 6 points. And I do believe that we see that continue into the second half, even if they're able to score. It's going to take them, scoring two TDs, and so far, the closest that they have been able to reach the end zone, the red zone, but failed multiple times to convert those trips to TDs. Now we see the Chargers with the ball, just over 2.5 minutes left. Slight, running back draw, looking to see who that was out of the backfield. Is it, Dobbins, I believe. Yep. Helping, our prop that we just jumped on a couple of minutes ago, taking his over 36.5 props, or over 36.5 rushing yards. As he was able to pick up, a modest 3 yards on that play. But we don't need it to come all on one play. Now, if it happens to, don't think anybody's going to be complaining on cashing that ticket. But still, many ways that, we can get to that over on such a low prop. As we hit 2-minute warning in this game with not much time left in the first half, and the Chargers have a massive 15-point lead, looking to go into halftime with an even larger lead. Now, we were talking about the Jazz and Clippers in their matchup, and scoring persists. The Clippers putting up 35 points in the first quarter on the Utah Jazz. It'll be interesting to see, can they continue this throughout the rest of the game. Taking a peek at the team total for the Clippers, we're looking at 120.5 with the under currently being juiced. We're actually seeing these lines slide around a little bit. 35 points in the first in the first quarter. It'll be a question of, can they continue that pace and continue the offensive production? Now, the Clippers in the past have been a team to utilize more half court and pace of play to help control the game, which can, in a lot of instances, lead to lower point totals. And even at the moment, seeing it tick up to 122.5. Actually going to jump in the under on this play as well. Currently seeing minus 115 for under 122.5 points on the Clippers team total. So, we got a few prop plays out there at the moment. Still keeping an eye on this game total as things progress. As we jumped in on the under 48 pregame number, as well as the under 54, and go take a peek. In the currently the number is sitting right back at that 54 with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Now, I will say, if the Chargers find a way to reach the end zone here, we could see that total tick up to somewhere in the range of 58.5, 59, maybe 60 points on the game total. And it'll be quite the challenge not to potentially jump in on the under yet again. Now, they say don't chase your losses, and that is very true. But this game script is playing out in a fashion that I expected it might. Talking about points on the Chargers side of the ball, Bengals struggling to put up points and keep up with the Chargers. And I do believe in the second half we're going to see the Chargers slow things down more with the running game. Now, we do see them trying to utilize the passing game to get into scoring position with a quick pass that picks up 10, 11 yards, not only getting a first down, but getting out of bounds. We see the Bengals get a little bit of pressure on Chargers, but only an incomplete pass on this play, preserving their. Well, I don't believe. Yeah, the Chargers are without timeout, so it'll be highly important that they either manage to get out of bounds or do like Justin Herbert did and throw the ball away in the instance where there isn't a play to be made. Now, the Chargers are currently at their own 45-yard line, so they are going to have to pick up some yardage, and an inside handoff to, I believe, J.K. Dobbins. Works for our Russian prop, picking up a couple of yards, but makes you question if that's the best play call at the moment in a 2nd and 10. Currently now looking at a 3rd and 8 with the clock ticking. Chargers don't seem to be in much of a rush, and if they don't get a first down here, I'm curious if we see the Bengals try and call a timeout to preserve any of the clock for the remainder of the first half. We do see him bleeding the clock down low in the play clock. Justin Herbert drops back. Now we see him breaking to the outside, running for the first down and able to pick it up. QB containment has been a major issue for the Bengals so far in this matchup. That is the 3rd or 4th time that Justin Herbert has been able to drop back, navigate the pocket, and find a rushing lane to pick up a nice chunk of yardage each time he's done so. And again, not only did he pick up the first down on this rush, able to get out of bounds and preserve the clock for the offense, as they have no timeouts. They still have 50 seconds left on the clock, currently snapping the ball from the 43-yard line of the Bengals. Now we see him calling another run play and a handoff option. Herbert decided to keep the ball, but ultimately ended up losing a yard on the play. Raises the question, are the Chargers playing for a field goal, as they have no timeouts and yet are still calling running plays? And we see the clock stop on an incomplete pass, but there is a flag on the play. And it's another personal foul, roughing the passer on the defense. Now we saw a lack of discipline early in the first half, or early in the first quarter, on the Bengals on the offensive side of the ball. And now it's, easily you could say a ticky-tack foul, but one that you can't make when you know the refs are going to call something like that. And now the Chargers find themselves inside the 30-yard line of the Bengals, firing downfield for a long pass to get the ball to the 5-yard line. No timeouts. They're going to have to spike the ball to preserve the clock. Tick, 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 tick. And they're able to stop the clock with 13 seconds left and the ball at the 5-yard line. Now, with no timeouts, it does make you wonder how many shots at the end zone will the Chargers take on this play. And it was Will Disley that got them down to the 5-yard line, looking nearly like a 25-yard play. And we were talking about his receiving prop just a few minutes ago, and if you jumped on that over, I believe it was 70.5, 75.5, you got to be sitting real pretty right now if you didn't just cash that ticket already. Now we see a snap from the 5, and the ball just thrown away. Now there will be a question about intentional grounding. Not seeing any flags. Now we got 8 seconds left on the clock, possibly time to take one shot at the end zone. Now it'll be interesting to see what they, I guess they're saying that the running back was in the area. Taking another shot at the end zone with a quick pass out the back of the end zone, but no catch. 4 seconds left on the clock. They are throwing a flag in the end zone. Now, if this is pass interference, we could see the ball. Yeah, defensive pass interference. We're going to see the ball placed at the 1-yard line. Now, do we see the Chargers go for the TD, or do we see them run the field goal unit out on the field? It's yet to be confirmed what they are going to do. Now, we did see them go for it earlier. Now, nope. They're putting got the field goal unit out on the field, going for the field goal to make this an 18-point lead in the first half and go into overtime. Hopefully, the kick is up. Good. Going into halftime with a 24-6 over the Bengals. Now, as I mentioned, just a second ago, it was Will Disley that caught what appeared to be roughly about a 25-yard pass that got them down to the 5-yard line. Earlier, we talking about his receiving prop, and it was, I believe, at 25.5 in that game, or for the game. and currently getting it pulled up. He's sitting at 3 receptions with 73 yards on those receptions. You know, a live prop sitting at 82.5 yards. Now, if you jumped on that 75.5, you're only looking at needing 3 yards to cash there. Now, somebody else we had talked about a little bit before this game was Chase Brown and the possibility of, his rushing and receiving combined yards. Now we see him with 29 yards in the run game, but 0 utilization in the passing game so far. Now we were looking at the under in this market for Chase Brown, and currently sitting pretty good, seeing that the number for rushing and receiving yards was 95.5, I believe, and currently sitting at only 29. Now we are on the Gesicki prop, over 2.5 receptions, still without a reception in this game. We'll have to see how things turn out for the rest of the contest. Now if we go back and take a look, see where the game totals, well, they have things locked up at the moment. I don't suspect that field goal moved the game total very much. Currently looking at 30 points overall. Now we did jump on the under 19.5 on the Bengals team total prop, or team total, and currently you've seen that tick down a point, but Bengals are going to need 2 full touchdowns in the second half to clear this clear the team total at 19.5. And seeing as how they were unable to score a single touchdown in the first half, got to feel good about where this number's sitting. Now, I'm still seeing a total of 54 in this matchup. Doesn't appear that the number moved any with the field goal, and I think that works out well for us, because even though the number is sitting at, we're seeing 30 total points so far from both teams in this game, I think we see the Chargers lean a lot more on the run game and less on the pass game that we saw dominate the play calling in the first half, and utilizing that run game to help grind the clock away. Now, since we're at halftime, let's take a little peek, go back to the NBA, see what Clippers are doing in their matchup with the Jazz. As the Clippers have not taken the pedal off of scoring, already at 52 points with almost half the second quarter still left to play. Now the Jazz have been what appears to be the exact opposite in this matchup, with only 34 points so far. See the numbers is locked up currently, but it looked like the game total, I'm seeing 223.5, and that may be slightly over where the pregame number opened or closed at, but we're still seeing we're going to need scoring on the Jazz side of the ball if there's any hopes of trying to clear an over on the game total there. We're seeing a massive spread of 19.5, as the Clippers have a 19-point lead in their matchup, 57-36 over the Jazz. It does not appear that the Jazz are going to be able to keep up with the Clippers in any way in this matchup. Now, folks, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content that you're getting, and the advice and guidance that you are receiving through these live markets. As the beauty of these live markets is they present many opportunities not available when the game started, and thus creating angles and value on a lot of these plays. Now, I'm your man DWeezy. Everybody take care out there, and make sure to be responsible with all your gambling. Peace.